Marcus Rodriguez never imagined that the pristine land his grandmother left him would become a battlefield. When corporate executives in $1,000 suits arrived claiming his mineral rights, he thought it was just another greedy land grab. But as their bulldozers rolled onto his property and their lawyers filed injunction after injunction, Marcus discovered something that would change everything. The very minerals they were stealing weren't just valuable. They were evidence. And now, with his family's legacy buried under corporate lies and his own freedom hanging in the balance, Marcus was about to turn their weapons against them in ways they never saw coming. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Martinez family ranch as Marcus Rodriguez stood on his porch, coffee growing cold in his weathered hands. Dust clouds billowed in the distance, not from cattle, but from the convoy of black SUVs winding down the dirt road toward his home. His stomach twisted with the bitter taste of inevitability. "They're early," Sarah called from inside the kitchen, her voice carrying that careful control she'd perfected over the past 3 months of legal battles. Marcus set down his mug and watched the vehicles approach. 5 SUVs, followed by 2 pickup trucks loaded with surveying equipment. Behind them, a flatbed trailer carrying something covered by a blue top. His jaw clenched as he recognized the lead vehicle, James Hartwell's custom Range Rover, pristine black paint gleaming like a predator's coat. "Marcus." 8-year-old Elena burst through the screen door, her backpack bouncing against her small frame. "Are those the bad men?" Before he could answer, the convoy pulled to a stop in his front yard, engines ticking as they cooled. Car doors slammed in succession, creating an ominous percussion that echoed off the barn walls. Marcus counted 12. Men in total, half wearing expensive suits despite the desert heat, the others in tactical gear that made his skin crawl. James Hartwell emerged from the lead vehicle like he owned the place, which, according to the courts, he now did. The CEO of Apex Mining Corporation adjusted his silk tie and surveyed the property with the calculating gaze of a man who turned mountains into profit margins. "Mr. Rodriguez," Hartwell called out, his voice carrying the false friendliness of a snake oil salesman. "I trust you received our final notice." Marcus stepped down from the porch, his boots crunching on gravel. At 42, he still carried the lean strength of a man who'd worked the land his entire life, but the stress of the last year had carved new lines around his dark eyes. "I got it. Doesn't mean I'm accepting it. I'm afraid acceptance is no longer required." Hartwell produced a thick folder from his briefcase. "Federal court order, signed this morning. As of 9 a.m., Apex Mining Corporation has full mineral and subsurface rights to this property, including easement access for extraction. Operations." Sarah appeared beside Marcus, Elena's hand clutched tightly in hers. His wife's auburn hair caught the morning light as she stepped forward, chin raised in defiance despite the fear flickering in her green eyes. "You can't just take our home." "We are not taking your home, Mrs. Rodriguez," said the woman who'd emerged from the second SUV. Patricia Knox, Apex's head legal counsel, wore her power-like armor, designer suit, perfectly styled blonde hair, and a smile sharp enough to cut glass. "You retain surface rights to the residential structures and 3 acres surrounding them. Everything else." She gestured toward the rolling hills dotted with century-old oak trees. "Belongs to us." Marcus felt his hands clench into fists. "This land has been in my family for 4 generations. My great-great-grandfather built that barn with his own hands." "Your great-great-grandfather," Knox consulted her tablet, "Antonio Martinez, sold the mineral rights to Standard Oil in 1923 for $250. Those rights changed hands several times before Apex acquired them last year. Perfectly legal." "That's impossible." Sarah's voice cracked. "We would have known. We've owned this land free and clear. You owned the surface," Hartwell interrupted, his patience wearing thin in the desert heat. "The subsurface is a different matter entirely. And frankly, we've been more than generous allowing you to remain on the property during the transition period." Elena tugged on her mother's hand. "Mama, what are they talking about?" Before Sarah could answer, the sound of heavy machinery rumbled in the distance. Marcus turned to see a line of trucks cresting the hill, bulldozers, excavators, and drilling equipment that dwarfed his modest ranch house. "You're making a mistake," Marcus said, his voice low and dangerous. "Whatever you think is down there, it's not worth destroying people's lives." Hartwell's expression shifted, revealing a predator's hunger beneath the corporate facade. "Oh, but it is, Mr. Rodriguez. You see, Your little ranch sits on top of one of the largest lithium deposits in North America. With the electric vehicle market exploding, we are looking at potential revenues in the billions. Knox stepped forward, her heels clicking on the gravel. We've prepared a very generous relocation package. Enough to purchase a comparable property anywhere in the state, plus a significant cash settlement for your inconvenience. This isn't about money. Marcus's voice rose, years of frustration boiling over. This is my daughter's heritage. This is where my grandmother taught me to ride, where my father built that workshop, where Sarah and I were married under that oak tree. He pointed toward an ancient tree whose massive trunk had witnessed over a century of family history. Very touching, Hartwell said, checking his Rolex. You have 2 hours to remove any personal belongings you want to keep. After that, we begin preliminary excavation. And if we refuse to leave, then sheriff's deputies will escort you off the property. Knox's smile turned predatory. I should mention that interfering with legally permitted mining operations is a federal offense. Prison time, heavy fines, permanent criminal record. Hardly the legacy you want to leave your daughter. Elena started to cry, the sound cutting through Marcus like a knife. Sarah knelt down and gathered their daughter in her arms, whispering reassurances that sounded hollow even to her own ears. Marcus felt something break inside him, not his spirit, but his faith in the system he'd always trusted to protect honest people. There has to be something we can do. Some legal recourse. You've exhausted your appeals, Knox replied coldly. 3 different courts have upheld our claim. The mineral rights are legitimate, the permits are in order, and the environmental impact assessment has been approved. This is happening, Mr. Rodriguez, with or without your cooperation. As if summoned by her words, the heavy machinery began moving down the hill toward the ranch. The earth trembled under the weight of progress, and Marcus watched his world begin to crumble. But as he stared at the approaching bulldozers, something stirred in his memory. His grandmother, Rosa Martinez, had been a meticulous record keeper. Every document related to the ranch had been carefully preserved in the old roll-top desk in the study. If these people claimed to own mineral rights dating back to 1923, there would be records. And if there were records, there might be secrets. Fine, Marcus said suddenly, surprising everyone including himself. We'll pack up and go. But I want to see the original documentation. The 1923 mineral rights sale you claim gives you ownership. Hartwell and Knox exchanged glances. I'm not sure that's necessary, Knox began. It's necessary to me, Marcus interrupted. If I'm going to lose everything my family built, I want to understand exactly how it happened. Call it closure. After a moment's hesitation, Knox nodded. Very well. I can arrange for you to review the relevant documents at our legal offices next week. No, Marcus said firmly. Today. Before we leave. If this is all legal and above board, you shouldn't have any problem showing me the paperwork right now. Hartwell's jaw tightened, but he nodded curtly. Fine. Patricia, get him the documents. Let's wrap this up. As Knox returned to her SUV to retrieve the files, Marcus caught Sarah's eye and saw understanding pass between them. She knew him well enough to recognize when he was hunting for something. 20 minutes later, Marcus sat at his own kitchen table while Knox spread out a collection of legal documents, photocopies, and official seals. The mineral rights sale from 1923 looked legitimate. Yellowed paper, faded ink, and what appeared to be his great-great-grandfather's signature. But something was wrong. Marcus studied the document carefully, his mind racing back to the stories his grandmother had told him about Antonio Martinez. The old man had been fiercely protective of the family land, often saying it would remain in Martinez's hands until the end of time. This signature, Marcus said slowly, pointing to the bottom of the 1923 document. It says Antonio Martinez. Correct, Knox replied impatiently. My great-great-grandfather couldn't write English. He could barely write Spanish. Grandmother Rosa always said he signed everything with an X because he never learned to write his full name. Knox's confident expression faltered for just a moment. Perhaps you're mistaken about your family history. I'm not mistaken. Marcus stood up, adrenaline surging through his veins. This document is a forgery. The kitchen fell silent except for the tick of the old wall clock and the distant rumble of approaching machinery. Hartwell's face had gone pale beneath his expensive tan. That's a very serious accusation, Mr. Rodriguez, Knox said carefully. Marcus jerked awake to the acrid smell of smoke and Elena's terrified screams. Orange light flickered against the bedroom windows as he stumbled from bed, his mind struggling to process what his senses already knew. The barn was on fire. Sarah. He shook his wife's shoulder as she sat up, confusion giving way to horror as she saw the glow outside. Get Elena. Get to the truck. Now. He grabbed his jeans from a chair, pulling them on as he ran barefoot through the house. The front door stood slightly ajar. He always locked it, had locked it last night after the confrontation with Apex. His blood turned to ice as he spotted the crude message dripping in red paint across the white wooden door. Drop it, or join. Them. Daddy. Elena's voice cracked with terror from the living room. The cows aren't moving. Marcus burst through the screen door and stopped dead. His 12 head of cattle lay motionless in the pasture, their bodies arranged in a grotesque line facing the burning barn. Even from 50 yards away, he could see the foam around their mouths. Poison. Jesus Christ, he whispered, then louder, Sarah, don't let Elena look outside. But it was too late. His daughter stood pressed against the living room window, her small hands leaving prints on the glass as she stared at the carnage. Tears streamed down her face as she tried to understand what had happened to the animals she'd named and fed every morning for 3 years. Sarah appeared beside him, her face pale in the firelight. My God, Marcus, who would do this? He didn't answer because they both knew. The message on the door wasn't subtle. Neither was the timing, less than 24 hours after he'd exposed. They're fraudulent documents. We need to call the police, Sarah said, pulling out her phone. No. Marcus grabbed her wrist gently but firmly. Not yet. What do you mean, not yet? They killed our animals, Marcus. They're threatening our family. And who's going to investigate? Marcus's voice was grim. Sheriff Patterson, who's been taking campaign contributions from Apex for their past 2 election cycles. Deputy Morrison, whose brother-in-law works for their legal department. Sarah, think about this. They've already corrupted the courts. What makes you think they haven't brought the local law enforcement to? The barn's roof collapsed in a shower of sparks and burning timber. Marcus watched decades of memories turn to ash, his father's workshop, the tack room where he'd learned to repair bridles, the hayloft where he'd shared his first kiss with Sarah Martinez 23 years ago. Then what do we do? Sarah's voice broke. We can't fight them alone. Marcus stared at the flames, his mind racing. We don't fight them. We destroy them. Before Sarah could respond, headlights swept across the yard. A white pickup truck pulled up behind Marcus's Ford, and Tom Bradley climbed out. Their neighbor was in his 70s but moved with the spry energy of a man half his age. He'd been fighting his own battle with Apex over water rights to the creek that ran between their properties. Saw the fire from my bedroom window, Tom called out, jogging over with surprising speed. Already called the volunteer fire department, but he stopped as he saw the dead cattle and the message on the door. Sweet Mother of God. Tom, get back in your truck and go home, Marcus said urgently. This isn't safe. Like hell I will. The older man's jaw set in stubborn lines. They did this to you. They'll do it to me next. Apex has been trying to force me off my land for 8 months. Guess they're done playing nice. The wail of sirens grew louder as the volunteer fire department approached. Marcus knew most of the volunteers personally, good people who'd worked alongside him during the drought 3 years ago, who'd helped rebuild the Hendersons' house after the tornado. But even good people could be pressured, threatened, bought. Tom, I need you to listen to me very carefully, Marcus said. Can you get to your safe without anyone seeing you? Course I can. It's my house. I need you to document everything in there about your dealings with Apex. Every letter, every contract, every threat they've made. Can you do that? Already done. Started keeping records the day they first showed up. Tom's eyes narrowed. Why? Marcus looked at his burning barn, his poisoned cattle, his terrified daughter. Something had crystallized in his mind, a plan that was either brilliant or suicidal. Maybe both. Because we are going to war. The fire trucks arrived in a cacophony of sirens and diesel engines. Chief Rodriguez, no relation, despite the shared surname, jumped down from the lead truck and surveyed the scene with professional efficiency. Anyone hurt? Chief Rodriguez called out. No injuries, Marcus replied. But the cattle. I can see that. The chief's expression was grim. He'd fought enough suspicious fires over the years to recognize arson when he saw it. You got any idea who might have done this? Before Marcus could answer, another vehicle pulled into the yard. Sheriff Patterson's cruiser, followed by 2 deputies. Marcus felt his stomach sink as he recognized the timing. The fire department had been called 20 minutes ago. The sheriff's office was 40 minutes away on a good day. Someone had tipped them off. Sheriff Patterson climbed out of his cruiser, a heavy-set man in his 50s whose uniform strained across his considerable belly. He surveyed the scene with what looked like practiced indifference, his gaze lingering on the message painted across the front door. Evening, Marcus, Patterson said, his tone carefully neutral. Heard you had some trouble. Someone burned my barn and poisoned my cattle, Dale. I'd call that more than trouble. Any idea who might want to hurt you? The sheriff's question sounded routine, but Marcus caught the warning in his eyes. Don't make this complicated. Could be anyone, Marcus replied carefully. Lot of people upset about the mining situation. Mining situation? Patterson's eyebrows rose in feigned confusion. Thought that was all settled. Court ruled in favor of Apex, didn't it? Court ruled based on fraudulent documents. The silence that followed was loaded with tension. Deputy Morrison shifted uncomfortably, his hand drifting toward his service weapon. Chief Rodriguez stopped directing his firefighters and turned to listen. That's a mighty serious accusation, Patterson said slowly. You got proof of that? Working on it. Well, until you do, I'd suggest keeping those kinds of accusations to yourself. Could be seen as inflammatory. Might even look like you're trying to stir up trouble after losing a legal battle. The threat was clear. Marcus felt Sarah's hand slip into his, her fingers cold with fear. But underneath the terror, he sensed something else, resolve. His wife had grown up on this land too. She understood what they were fighting for. Sheriff, Chief Rodriguez interrupted. We've got a problem here. This fire was definitely arson. Accelerant pattern, multiple ignition points. And those cattle didn't die natural deaths. Animals die all the time, Chief, Patterson replied dismissively. Could have been disease, bad feed, any number of things. As for the fire, he shrugged. Old barns burn. Faulty wiring, lightning, strikes, careless smoking. Happens more often than you'd think. Marcus watched in amazement as Patterson systematically dismissed evidence of arson and mass poisoning. The man wasn't even trying to hide his corruption. What about the message on the door? Tom Bradley spoke up for the first time. Patterson glanced at the red paint dripping down the white door. What message? I see some kids' graffiti. Probably. Teenagers playing pranks. Boys will be boys. Drop it, or join them, Chief Rodriguez read aloud. Doesn't sound like teenage pranks to me. Matter of interpretation, Patterson said. Could mean anything. Drop it could refer to dropping. Litter, joining a cleanup campaign. These kids today, always organizing environmental causes. Marcus stared at the sheriff in disbelief. The man was actually trying to spin death threats as environmental activism. Dale, Marcus said quietly, what did they pay you? The sheriff's face went rigid. Watch yourself, Rodriguez. You're walking a thin line here. Wouldn't want anyone to think you're making unfounded accusations against a peace officer. Wouldn't want anyone to think a peace officer is taking bribes from mining companies either. Patterson took a step forward, his hand moving to his handcuffs. Maybe you need some time to cool off. Grief can make a man say stupid things. He's not saying anything stupid, Tom Bradley interjected. He's saying what we are all thinking. Apex Mining has been terrorizing this whole valley for months, and you've done nothing to stop them. That's enough. Patterson snapped. Both of you, step back and calm down, or I'll arrest you for interfering with a police investigation. What investigation? Chief Rodriguez demanded. You just spent 10 minutes explaining why there's nothing to investigate. The standoff stretched. Out under the orange glow of the dying fire, Marcus realized this was the moment when everything changed, when he either backed down and accepted defeat, or crossed a line that would put his family in mortal danger. He thought about Elena's tears, about the animals she'd loved lying dead in the pasture. He thought about 4 generations of his family who'd worked this land, who'd built something lasting and good. He thought about the billions of dollars in lithium beneath his feet, and the people who'd kill to get their hands on it. "Chief Rodriguez," Marcus said clearly, "I want this fire investigated by the state fire marshal. I want the cattle autopsied by an independent veterinary lab. And I want federal agents to investigate the fraudulent mineral rights documents that started this." Special Agent Catherine Mills arrived at the Rodriguez ranch 3 days later, driving a nondescript Ford sedan that looked nothing like the government vehicle it was. She was younger than Marcus had expected, maybe 35, with shoulder length, black hair and sharp hazel eyes that seemed to catalogue everything they saw. Her handshake was firm, her voice crisp with authority. "Mr. Rodriguez, I'm Agent Mills, FBI Economic Crimes Unit. I understand you have some serious allegations to make." Marcus led her to the kitchen table where he'd laid out everything. The forged mineral rights documents, photographs of the poisoned cattle, samples of the red paint from his door, and most importantly, his grandmother's meticulously kept records dating back to 1923. "This is Antonio Martinez's actual signature," Marcus explained, pointing to a faded marriage certificate. "Notice the X mark. He couldn't write his name. But look at this." He placed the Apex mineral rights document beside it. Perfect English cursive. Dated the same year. Agent Mills examined both documents with a magnifying glass, her expression growing more focused. "The paper stock is wrong for 1923. This is modern. Acid-free paper, artificially aged. The ink chemistry will tell us for certain, but I'd bet money this was created within the last 2 years. So it's definitely fraud." "It's definitely fraud. The question is how deep this goes." Mills looked up from the documents. "Mr. Rodriguez, what I'm about to tell you cannot leave this room. We've been investigating Apex Mining Corporation for 18 months. They're suspected of similar document fraud in Wyoming, Nevada, and Arizona. Your case might be the key to bringing down the entire organization." Marcus felt a surge of vindication, but it was tempered by concern. "What does that mean for my family? These people have already shown they're willing to kill to protect their secrets." "It means you're in danger. It also means you have the full protection of the federal government." Mills closed her notepad and leaned forward. "I'm going to be honest with you. Apex Mining isn't just a corrupt corporation. Our investigation suggests they're connected to organized crime syndicates that launder money through mining operations. The people you're fighting have killed before, and they'll kill again if they think you're a threat." Sarah, who'd been listening quietly from the doorway, stepped into the room. "Then we run. We take Elena and disappear until this is over." "Running won't help," Mills said gently. "These people have resources, connections, and they've already demonstrated they can corrupt local law enforcement. Your only safety is in helping us destroy them completely." Marcus studied the FBI agent's face. "What exactly are you asking us to do?" "We need you to wear a wire. Set up a meeting with Hartwell or Knox. Get them to talk about the fraudulent documents. If we can get them on tape admitting to the forgery, we can move on the entire conspiracy." "That's insane," Sarah protested. "You want him to walk into a room with people who've already tried to kill us." "We'll have full surveillance, backup agents positioned within 30 seconds of his location. It's the best way to keep your family safe long term." Marcus looked at his wife, then at the photographs of his dead cattle. "When do we do it?" The meeting was arranged for the following afternoon at Apex Mining's regional headquarters in Alamosa, 2 hours south of the ranch. Marcus would claim he'd reconsidered their relocation offer and wanted to negotiate a settlement. The wire was a tiny device taped to his chest, virtually invisible beneath his shirt. "Remember," Agent Mills said as she adjusted the transmitter, "we need them to acknowledge the mineral rights documents. Get them talking about the 1923 sale, about how they acquired the rights. If they slip up and admit the documents were created recently, we have them." Marcus drove to Alamosa alone, his hand steady on the wheel despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. The Apex building was a gleaming monument to corporate success, 10 stories of glass and steel rising from what had been farmland 20 years earlier. He parked in the visitor section and walked through the marble lobby. his boots echoing off polished floors. James Hartwell met him on the 7th floor, his smile as artificial as the tropical plants decorating the reception area. "Marcus, I'm glad you called. I was hoping we could work something out like civilized men." They walked through a maze of cubicles filled with geologists, engineers, and accountants, the machinery of extraction laid bare. Hartwell's corner office overlooked the San Luis Valley, offering a panoramic view of the mountains where Apex's other operations carved wounds into the earth. "Coffee? Water?" Hartwell gestured to the leather chairs arranged around a glass conference table. "I'm fine." Marcus sat down, conscious of the wire beneath his shirt. "Let's talk about your offer." "Excellent. Patricia will be joining us in a moment. She's got the paperwork ready." Hartwell settled into his chair with obvious satisfaction. "I have to say, I'm impressed. Not many people are smart enough to recognize when they're beaten." The office door opened and Patricia Knox entered, carrying a thick folder and wearing the same predatory smile Marcus remembered from their first confrontation. She spread documents across the conference table with practiced efficiency. "We've prepared a very generous package," Knox said. $2 million cash, plus we'll purchase a comparable property anywhere in Colorado. All you have to do is sign a non-disclosure agreement and transfer the surface rights to us." Marcus pretended to study the contracts while his mind raced. He needed to get them talking about the mineral rights fraud, but they were being careful to focus only on the legitimate surface transaction. "This is generous," Marcus said finally. "But I'm still bothered by something. How did you know about the lithium deposits under my land? That information isn't public record." Hartwell and Knox exchanged glances. "Geological surveys," Hartwell said smoothly. "We've been mapping mineral resources throughout the region for years." "But you specifically targeted my property. Out of thousands of acres in the valley, you came straight to me. Why?" Knox's smile faltered slightly. "The mineral rights gave us legal access to conduct subsurface exploration, the mineral rights you claim my great-great-grandfather sold in 1923. Marcus leaned forward. "I've been thinking about that. Seems strange that a man who couldn't read or write English would sell mineral rights. How did that transaction actually happen?" The silence stretched for long seconds. Hartwell's jaw tightened as he realized where the conversation was heading. "Historical records can be incomplete," Hartwell said carefully. "What matters is that we have clear legal title to the subsurface rights." "Do you?" Marcus pressed. "Because I've been doing some research of my own. Antonio Martinez never signed anything with his full name. Ever. Every legal document he signed was marked with an X, so how do you explain a mineral rights sale with his signature in perfect English cursive?" Knox's face had gone pale. "Mr. Rodriguez, I think we should focus on the matter at hand. The matter at hand is that you're trying to steal my land based on forged documents." Marcus's voice rose, and he saw both executives tense. "You created fake mineral rights to justify stealing billions of dollars worth of lithium, and when I figured it out, you burned my barn and poisoned my cattle." "That's enough," Hartwell snapped, all pretense of friendliness vanishing. "You have no proof of any wrongdoing. I have proof that Antonio Martinez couldn't write his own name. I have proof that your mineral rights document is a forgery. And I have proof that you knew it was a forgery when you filed your legal claims." Knox was frantically gathering up the documents, her professional composure cracking. "This meeting is over. Security will escort you out." But Marcus wasn't finished. He stood up, his voice carrying the fury of 4 generations of honest men. "You want to know the funny thing? If you just offered to buy the mineral rights legitimately, I might have sold them. My family has always been reasonable people. But you were so greedy, so arrogant, you thought you could just take what wasn't yours." "Get out," Hartwell said through clenched teeth. "Get out before I have you arrested for trespassing." "On what grounds? We had a scheduled business meeting. Unless there's some other reason you want me gone." Marcus let the implication hang in the air. That's when Hartwell made the mistake that would destroy everything he'd built. "Listen to me very carefully, you ignorant rancher. Those documents have been legally recognized by 3 federal courts. They've been authenticated by expert historians. If you keep pushing this conspiracy theory of yours, you're going to find yourself facing charges for filing false police reports, harassment, and defamation. Authenticated by expert historians. Marcus repeated. Which historians? What authentication? Process. Knox grabbed Hartwell's arm. James, don't. But Hartwell was too angry to be cautious. We employed the finest document authentication specialists money can buy. The paper was properly aged, the ink was chemically accurate, even the handwriting analysis passed expert scrutiny. That signature is indistinguishable from authentic. 1923 cursive script. The office fell silent as the implications of his words sank in. Knox looked like she might vomit. Hartwell's face drained of color as he realized what he'd just confessed. Marcus smiled grimly. So you admit the documents were artificially aged and the signature was created to mimic 1923 handwriting. Thank you for clearing that. Marcus burst through the front door of his ranch house like a man possessed, his keys still jangling in his shaking hand. Sarah looked up from helping Elena with homework at the kitchen table, and her face went white at his expression. Pack a bag, he said urgently. Right now. We are leaving. Daddy. Elena's voice was small, confused. Are we going on a trip? Before Marcus could answer, Agent Mills stepped out from the living room, her hand resting on her service weapon. Mr. Rodriguez, we need to talk. The wire went dead 20 minutes ago, and our surveillance team lost contact with you in the parking garage. Marcus pulled out his phone and showed her the photograph of Elena. Mills's professional composure cracked as she stared at the image. Jesus, she whispered. How did they? We had eyes on the school. There was no black sedan. They are not amateurs, Marcus said grimly. This isn't just some corrupt mining company, is it? You knew that when you asked me to wear the wire. Mills holstered her weapon and ran a hand through her hair. We suspected organized crime involvement, but the level of sophistication they are showing. She studied the photo again. This was taken with a telephoto lens from at least 3 blocks away. Professional surveillance equipment, counter-surveillance protocols. These people have resources. Sarah gathered Elena protectively in her arms. What do they want? For us to disappear, Marcus said. 24 hours to leave Colorado and never come back. Then we leave, Sarah said immediately. We take Elena and we run. I don't care about the land, about the minerals, about any of it. I care about our daughter. Marcus looked at his wife and child, everything that mattered to him in the world, and felt his resolve crumble. But Agent Mills stepped forward. If you run, they win, she said quietly. Not just here, but everywhere. These people are using mining operations to launder hundreds of millions of dollars in drug money, human trafficking proceeds, and weapon sales. The lithium under your land is just one piece of a massive criminal enterprise that spans 5 states. I don't care, Sarah snapped. Let someone else be the hero. There is no one else. Mills's voice was urgent. Your husband just got the head of Apex Mining to confess on tape that they forged federal documents. That recording can bring down the entire network, but only if we can protect you long enough to use it. Elena looked up at her parents with wide, frightened eyes. Are the bad men going to hurt us? Marcus knelt down beside his daughter, his heart breaking. No, sweetheart. Daddy won't let anyone hurt you. He looked up at Mills. What are you proposing? Witness protection. Full federal marshals serve as protection for your family while we build our case. New identities, relocation, complete security. For how long? However long it takes. Could be months, could be years. Sarah's face hardened. So either we run and live in fear forever, or we disappear into federal protection and live in fear forever. Those are our choices. There's a third option, Marcus said slowly, an idea forming in his mind. We fight back. Mills shook her head. Mr. Rodriguez, these people just demonstrated they can get to your daughter anywhere, anytime. Fighting back isn't an option. Isn't it? Marcus stood up, his military training kicking in. They threatened Elena to force me to run. But what if I don't run? What if I make them think I'm running, but instead I turn their own weapons against them? What are you talking about? Marcus moved to his grandmother's old desk and pulled out a detailed topographical map of the valley. They want the lithium under my land, right? Billions of dollars worth of mineral wealth. But to get it, they need the mining permits, the environmental clearances, the infrastructure access. He spread the map on the kitchen table, pointing to a narrow canyon that connected his property to the main highway. Everything has to come through Devil's Canyon. Every piece of equipment, every truck full of ore, every worker. It's the only access point for miles. So I own Devil's Canyon too. My great-great-grandfather bought it specifically to control access to his land. The deed is ironclad, goes back to the 1890s territorial grants. Even if they steal my mineral rights, they can't get to the lithium without crossing my canyon. Agent Mills studied the map, her expression growing interested. You're talking about a choke point. I'm talking about leverage. Marcus's voice grew stronger as the plan solidified. They think they can threaten my family and I'll fold. But what if instead of running, we give them exactly what they want? Sarah looked at him like he'd lost his mind. Marcus, what are you saying? I'm saying we sell them the canyon access rights. For a very specific price. Mills understood. First, you want to make a deal. I want to make the deal they can't refuse. Access to billions of dollars in lithium, in exchange for my family's safety and their confession to federal crimes. Marcus traced the canyon route with his finger. Without access through Devil's Canyon, their entire operation is worthless. They can't build a road through the national forest, and the environmental impact study for a new access route would take years. They'll never agree to confess to federal crimes, Mills protested. They will if the alternative is losing everything. Marcus smiled grimly. We are going to offer them a choice: confess to document fraud and serve a few years in white-collar prison, or watch their billion-dollar operation die because they can't get their equipment to the mining site. Sarah shook her head. This is insane. These people kill witnesses. They don't negotiate with them. They don't kill people who can destroy their entire operation with a single phone call. Marcus looked at his wife steadily. Sarah, if we run, we'll spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders. If we disappear into witness protection, Elena grows up without friends, without roots, without a real life. This is our only chance to end it. Before Sarah could respond, Marcus's phone rang. The same unknown number from the parking garage. Hello, Mr. Rodriguez. The polite voice was tinged with amusement. I trust you received our message. Marcus put the phone on speaker, nodding to Agent Mills. I got it. And I have a counteroffer. Silence stretched for several seconds. I'm listening. You want the lithium under my land. I want my family safe. Let's make a deal. The only deal we are offering is your continued existence in exchange for your immediate departure. That's not going to work for me. See, I've been looking at the mining surveys, and I notice something interesting. The lithium deposit extends under Devil's Canyon, which I also own. Without access through that canyon, your entire operation is worthless. Another pause, longer this time. What are you proposing? A meeting. You, me, and the head of Apex Mining. We discuss terms. Terms for what? Marcus took a deep breath. Terms for how much it's going to cost you to buy access rights to Devil's Canyon. Because without that access, you've got billions of dollars in lithium you can never reach. The voice on the phone lost its polite veneer. You're making a very dangerous mistake, Mr. Rodriguez. No, I'm making a business proposition. The question is whether you're smart enough to take it. Where and when? Tomorrow at sunset. The old mining office at Devil's Canyon. Just you, me, and Hartwell. No weapons, no backup, no security teams. Just 3 businessmen having a conversation. And if we refuse? Marcus looked at the topographical map, at the narrow canyon that controlled access to billions of dollars in mineral wealth. Then you can explain to your investors why their billion-dollar lithium operation died because you were too proud to negotiate with a rancher. The line went silent for a full minute. When the voice returned, it was cold with calculation. Tomorrow at sunset. But understand this, Mr. Rodriguez. If you're playing games, your family dies. All of them. Understood. But if you're playing games, your entire operation dies. All of it. After the call ended, Agent Mills stared at Marcus in amazement. You just blackmailed organized crime. I just gave them a way to save face while confessing to federal crimes. Marcus folded up the map. They're businessmen first, criminals second. They'll take a few years in minimum security prison over losing hundreds of millions in revenue. Sarah grabbed his arm. And if you're wrong, if they decide to kill you and take the canyon by force. Marcus pulled her close, feeling the weight of everything they were risking. Then Agent Mills arrests them for murder, and the federal government seizes all their assets under RICO statutes. Either way, their criminal operation ends. As night fell over the ranch, Marcus stood on his porch looking out at Devil's Canyon in the distance. Tomorrow, he would walk into a meeting that would either save his family and destroy a criminal empire, or get him killed and leave Sarah and Elena to face the consequences alone. But for the first time in weeks, he felt like he was in control of his own destiny. The hunters had become the hunted, and Marcus Rodriguez was about to teach them that sometimes the prey has teeth. What none of them knew, not Agent Mills, not the organized crime syndicate, not even Marcus himself, was that James Hartwell had spent the last 6 hours making phone calls to people who made the syndicate look like choir boys. People who didn't negotiate, didn't make deals, and didn't leave witnesses. The meeting at Devil's Canyon wouldn't be about business at all. The abandoned mining office sat like a weathered gravestone at the mouth of Devil's Canyon, its rusted corrugated walls testament to a century of failed dreams. Marcus arrived 30 minutes early, positioning himself where he could see the single access road while staying hidden behind a boulder the size of a pickup truck. Agent Mills had wanted to wire him again, but he'd refused. These people would be checking for surveillance, and getting caught would mean Elena's death. The sun hung low over the western peaks when 2 vehicles approached Hartwell's range. Rover followed by a black Mercedes with tinted windows. Marcus watched through binoculars as 3 men emerged. Hartwell looked nervous, constantly checking his phone and glancing at the canyon walls. The man from the Mercedes was older, maybe 60, with silver hair and the kind of quiet confidence that came from never having to raise his voice to be obeyed. The third man made Marcus's blood run cold. Viktor Kozlov stepped out of the passenger seat like a predator surveying hunting grounds. Marcus recognized him from FBI wanted posters, a Russian enforcer suspected in dozens of murders across 3 countries. Tall, broad-shouldered, with pale eyes that held all the warmth of Arctic ice. This wasn't a business meeting. It was an execution. Marcus keyed the radio hidden in his jacket pocket. Mills, abort. They brought Kozlov. Agent Mills's voice crackled back through his earpiece. Negative. We are too close to abort now. Stick to the plan. The plan didn't include a professional killer. The plan included federal agents positioned throughout the canyon. You're covered. Marcus hoped she was right as he walked toward the mining office, his hands visible and empty. The 3 men watched him approach with varying degrees of hostility. Hartwell looked like he might vomit. The silver-haired man studied Marcus with the detached interest of an entomologist examining a particularly interesting insect. Mr. Rodriguez, the older man said in accented English. I am Dmitry Volkov. I believe you have something that belongs to us. Nothing belongs to you, Marcus replied evenly. But I have something you need. There's a difference. Volkov smiled, without warmth. Indeed. You have access rights to Devil's Canyon. We need that access to complete our lithium extraction operation. A simple business transaction. Simple transactions don't require bringing professional killers to the negotiating table. Kozlov shifted slightly, his jacket falling open to reveal a shoulder holster. Sometimes simple transactions require insurance policies. Marcus fought to keep his voice steady. Here's my offer. Apex Mining Corporation publicly admits to forging the 1923 mineral rights documents. James Hartwell and Patricia Knox serve their time for federal fraud charges. In exchange, I sell you canyon access rights for fair market value. Hartwell finally found his voice. You can't be serious. You want us to confess to federal crimes. White-collar federal crimes. Minimum security prison. Probably serve 18 months of a 3-year sentence. Better than what you're facing if this operation gets shut down. Volkov studied Marcus with renewed interest. You think like a businessman, Mr. Rodriguez. I respect that. But I'm afraid your proposal is unacceptable. Why? Because we don't negotiate with blackmailers. And because we don't leave witnesses who can testify about our operations. The words hung in the desert air like a death sentence. Marcus realized with crystal clarity that he'd miscalculated catastrophically. These weren't just criminals. They were killers who decided his family knew too much to live. My death won't get you the canyon access, Marcus said desperately. The rights pass to my wife, then to my daughter. You'll have to kill all of us, and that brings federal heat you can't afford. Actually, Volkov said conversationally, we've already solved that problem. Your wife and daughter died in a tragic house fire 20 minutes ago. By the time the volunteer fire department responds, there will be nothing left but ashes. Very sad. Very believable. Marcus felt the world tilt on its axis. His knees nearly buckled as the implications crashed over him. You're lying. Kozlov pulled out a cell phone and showed him a video feed. The Rodriguez ranch house was engulfed in flames, the roof already collapsed. Emergency vehicles surrounded the property, but Marcus could see they were too late. Sarah, he whispered, her name torn from his throat like a piece of his soul. With your family gone, Volkov continued calmly, the canyon rights will pass to the state, which will auction them to the highest bidder. We'll acquire them legally, mine the lithium, and everyone lives happily ever after. Except you, of course. Rage exploded through Marcus like molten steel. He lunged toward Kozlov, but the Russian enforcer was already moving. A massive fist caught Marcus in the solar plexus, driving the air from his lungs and dropping him to his knees in the dust. Nothing personal, Kozlov said, drawing his pistol. Simply business. The gunshot echoed off the canyon walls like thunder. But it wasn't Kozlov who fell. Agent Mills materialized from behind the mining office, her rifle smoking in her hands. The Russian enforcer toppled backward, a neat hole punched through his chest. Federal agents swarmed from concealment points throughout the canyon. There. Weapons trained on Volkov and Hartwell. FBI. Hands where we can see them. Volkov raised his hand slowly, his expression more annoyed than afraid. Agent Mills, I presume. Your reputation precedes you. Dmitry Volkov, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering, and about 20 other federal charges. Mills kept her rifle trained on the crime boss as other agents cuffed him. You have the right to remain silent. Marcus struggled to his feet, his mind reeling. The house fire, Sarah and Elena, are safe, Mills said quickly. We moved them to a federal safe house this morning. That video feed was from a controlled burn of an abandoned farmhouse 30 miles away. Your family is alive, Mr. Rodriguez. The relief hit Marcus like a physical blow. He doubled over, gasping for air as the terror and rage of the last few minutes crashed through his system. His wife and daughter were alive. The nightmare was over. But Volkov wasn't finished. You think this ends anything, Agent Mills? The crime boss smiled as the agents led him toward their vehicles. You have no idea how deep this goes. The lithium operation was just one small piece of a much larger puzzle. Cut off one head, and 2 more will take its place. We'll see about that. Mills watched as they loaded Volkov into an armored transport vehicle. We've been tracking your organization for 3 years. Today was just the beginning. As the federal convoy departed with their prisoners, Marcus sat on a boulder and tried to process what had just happened. In less than a week, he'd gone from fighting a civil lawsuit to helping bring down an international criminal conspiracy. His family's ranch had become ground zero for a federal investigation that would probably make headlines for months. What happens now? He asked Agent Mills. Now you go home to your family. The mineral rights fraud case will take months to work through the courts, but with Hartwell's recorded confession and the evidence we've gathered, Apex Mining Corporation is finished. The real mineral rights to your land will revert to you, which means you own one of the largest lithium deposits in North America. Marcus looked out at Devil's Canyon, where shadows were lengthening as the sun set behind the mountains. And the criminal organization. Volkov was just middle management, but with his testimony and the evidence we seized today, we'll roll up the entire network. Money laundering operations across 5 states, mining companies in 12 countries, connections to cartels in Mexico and crime families in Russia. Mills smiled grimly. Your little property dispute just became the key to dismantling a billion-dollar criminal empire. 3 months later, Marcus stood in the same spot where he'd nearly died, watching construction crews build the access road that would connect his lithium mine to the regional power grid. But this time, he was the one calling the shots. The Rodriguez Mining Corporation, a partnership between his family and 3 ethical mining companies, would extract the lithium using sustainable methods, with a percentage of profits going to environmental restoration and education programs. Elena would grow up knowing her college fund was secured, and that her father had fought for what was right. James Hartwell received 18 months in federal prison for document fraud. Patricia Knox got 2 years and disbarment. Dmitry Volkov and his organization faced life sentences under RICO statutes. But the most satisfying moment came when Marcus received a letter from the federal prosecutor's office. The investigation triggered by his case had resulted in the seizure of $2.3 billion in criminal assets, the arrest of 127 suspected money launderers and racketeers, and the shutdown of illegal mining operations in 4 countries. Sarah found him reading the letter on the porch of their rebuilt ranch house. "Any regrets?" she asked, settling beside him to watch Elena play with their new cattle dog in the yard. Marcus looked out at the land his family had fought to protect for 4 generations, then at the woman who'd stood beside him through the darkest moments of their lives, then at their daughter who would inherit both the ranch and the knowledge. That standing up for what's right was always worth the cost. "Just one," he said finally. "What's that?" Marcus smiled and pulled his wife close. "I wish my grandmother could have seen how this ended. She always said the land would take care." "Oh,